I'm Brandi. Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, is the Washington State Fair trying to keep out conservatives? We have some answers. Plus, Seattle sends yet another business tax increase to voters, and they say this one will actually help businesses. Weird. Speaking of business, Washington takes steps to give preferential treatment in government contracts to businesses that are at least 51% LGBTQ+. That and much more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support this show of ours for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. That's undividedpod.com. And you just click on the banner that says support the show for $5. Hello, and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi. Kruse. I think it's a lesson to start the show today, and it's something that we try to always preach. I don't want to be too preachy, but just to think critically and independently, and just because you want something to be true or you believe something might be true, to make sure that you look into it and get the full story. And this story just blew up over the weekend, and I'm not saying it's not true. I'll get into all the dirty details. I'm going to take you through our reporting on it to make sure that you leave more informed than anyone else on the internet about this story. But Nicole was saying we got more emails and comments and stuff about this story over the weekend than probably any story we've done in recent memory. So people are super fired up about it. The question is, should you be fired up about it? So there was a letter circulating on social media in Washington State, all over political social media, and it was sent from the Washington State Fair to the Alliance for Life. As you guys know, if you're not in the state, Washington State Fair is huge. It's coming up. It goes for about a month, and there's always this big building with a bunch of booths and vendors, and you can go in there, you can buy a bunch of crap you don't need, or you can learn about organizations in your area, etc. And there's always political booths there. So this letter to this woman with the Alliance for Life says, the Washington State Fair received your request for reinstatement of participation in the Northwest Connections exhibit during the State Fair in September. In a review with our board of directors, we are upholding our decision to decline your request for participation. And as it sounds, the Alliance for Life is a pro-life group that had a booth at the fair in previous years, and as this letter indicates, they're not going to be allowed to have a booth at the fair today. It says, or this coming month, it says previous participation in exhibits and attractions at the Washington State Fair does not guarantee continued involvement in perpetuity. The fair periodically reviews and updates our offerings to the public along with guidelines for participation. The Northwest Connection Department's exhibitor composition has been reviewed and evolving to meet our current guests' interests with the alignment of the fair's missions and values. The fair acknowledges that we have a different perspective regarding your booth and its display. We believe that your efforts would be better suited at events that more align with your mission. We appreciate your understanding and wish you success in your future endeavors. Is there a worse line to get in a letter or an email than we wish you success in your future endeavors? So on its face, it seems very clear. The Washington State Fair is not allowing the Alliance for Life, a pro-life organization, to have a display at this year's State Fair. And they say in there, we have different perspectives regarding your booth and its display. We believe your efforts would be better suited at events that more align with your mission. So that letter starts to go viral on the internet, also with conversation about the fair doing this same thing to other conservative groups that have long had booths at the fair. So there were state lawmakers who were putting out posts about this. Travis Couture said the Washington State Fair is run by partisan hacks and political cowards. They banned the Pierce County GOP booth after years of participation, but kept the Democrats. They can't handle free speech, so they censor like the petty, corrupt losers they are. State Rep Matt Marshall said the decision by the Western Washington Fair Association to deny the Pierce County Republican Party's longstanding fair booth is deeply disappointing and wholly unjustifiable. And the Pierce County Republican Party on its own Facebook said, don't go to the Washington State Fair this year. The new CEO is woke and won't let us do our traditional booth, kicked out a pro-life Christian group that didn't meet the fair's values as well. So that's sort of the picture that was being painted on social media. Now, I will say I think some of that is true, but I'm going to get to the actual facts of the situation, what the fair has told us. So what's circulating on social media over the weekend is that the fair is not allowing a Christian group, a pro-life group, and the Pierce County Republican Party. So we start to dig into this. The Pierce County GOP put out a statement pretty early on that dispelled one piece of misinformation, and that was that the Pierce County Republican Party's booth was prohibited. So that's not true. If you saw that on social media or you read it on social media, that's not true. The Pierce County Republican Party was not told you cannot have a booth at the fair this year. However, they were asked to agree to some stipulations that they had not been asked to agree to in the past that for them made it basically impossible from a financial perspective and a mission perspective to be able to have a booth at the fair this year. So the head of the Pierce County Republican Party put out a statement saying the party will not be participating in the Washington State Fair this year due to newly imposed restrictions that prohibit us from offering merchandise for donations to support our work, as well as gathering signatures for citizen-led initiatives. These new restrictions single out and limit the ability of organizations like ours to fully engage with the community. As a result, we have made the difficult decision to forego participation this year. So a little bit of background here that I got. The Republican Party for Pierce County pays thousands of dollars, maybe as much as $25,000 typically, to have a booth at the fair for the 1 month run. These booths are expensive and people come there, they do all sorts of things. And for the last couple years, one of the things that they have done at their booth is collect signatures. So for them, it's sort of, you got a bunch of people, hundreds of thousands of people coming through. So it's a good time to collect signatures. How do I know they've collected signatures at their booth? Well, because I went there and helped them in 2024 collect signatures at their booth. This is a picture of their booth and what it looked like in 2024. And we had all of the Let's Go Washington initiatives there. Nicole and I stopped by for an afternoon. It was highly publicized. We said, we're going to be at the state fair in the exhibition hall collecting signatures for the Let's Go Washington initiatives. And we did that for several hours. So that is something that they have done. And they're now being told that they're not allowed to do that. They say that's a departure for them. And I kind of know it's a departure for them because I just did it with them in 2024. So here's what the fair tells us about this element of the issue. They said, for more than a decade, the fair has provided a free speech area for those who apply. Signature gathering is only allowed in that area. When we became aware of signature gathering in other areas, we updated the contact policies in 2024. So what they're saying is what we did at the Pierce County Republican booth in collecting signatures in 2024 actually violated the rules. And when they became aware that signatures were being collected in the exhibition hall at the Republican booth, they updated their policies to be more clear that you can only engage in signature gathering in these designated free speech areas, which the Pierce County Republican Party told them over the weekend in an email exchange that we reviewed that that's impossible for them. They don't have the number of volunteers to man the booth, but also be out roaming in these free speech areas to collect signatures. So it just doesn't work for them. Now, I have some suspicions about all of this. I want to put a pin in that as I continue to talk about the other elements. So as they have done for years, the Pierce County Republican Party, to make up the cost of having that booth, which again is very expensive, they sell Republican merchandise, hats, t-shirts for a donation, basically to the party to help them recoup the costs. They sent me a couple of the t-shirt designs that they sent in to the fair for approval to sell this year. Some of them are some pretty simple classics like 1776, We the People. I've got one that says 4547 Trump. Chick's t-shirt, She Loves Jesus and America Too. I Stand for the Flag, I Kneel for the Cross. And then this one may be more triggering. This is my pride flag, and it's a picture of an American flag. So fully anticipating they'd be able to sell this Trump Republican merchandise again at the fair this year, because they have in previous years. Like I said, I literally was there. They were selling Trump t-shirts and they were flying off the shelves, by the way, freaking flying off the shelves. So they sent these t-shirt designs to the fair for approval to be able to sell them. And that's when they were notified via an amended contract that they would not be able to sell these sorts of t-shirts given that they're there as a political organization. And so the Pierce County Republican Party is like, well, we need to, or we can't afford to have this booth. So you're kind of undercutting our ability to even be there. This is what the fair told us about that. Because again, People sell all sorts of stuff at the fair. I've bought stuff in the expo hall. You can buy anything from cooking supplies to candles to clothing. So why can't you buy or donate some money for some Trump t-shirts? This is what they told us. They said the category they're in doesn't allow for selling of merchandise, but there are commercial vendors selling all types of products. But that's kind of the issue, is why were they able to sell that kind of merchandise in previous years, but not this year? And I haven't got a good answer on that from the fair yet. We've had a couple exchanges back and forth with the Washington State Fair with a whole long list of questions. That's one element that I'm not completely satisfied on, is why were they allowed two things. The signature gathering was highly publicized in 2024. We pushed it out on our social media channels that we would be there to do signature gathering at the booth. So if it wasn't in line with the rules then, why didn't they say something during the 1 month stretch where every single day the party was collecting signatures for the Let's Go Washington initiatives at that booth? If it was such a big deal, you'd think they would have stopped it, right? But now they're saying, oh, we didn't know about it. We had to clarify for 2025. And then why could they sell Trump gear in 2024, but now they can't? And you're saying that the type of category they're in doesn't allow for it. So we're going to continue to push the Washington State Fair on those 2 points. Now, let's talk quickly about that letter they sent the Alliance for Life, the pro-life group, where they said the fair acknowledges we have a different perspective regarding your booth and its display. We believe that your efforts would be better suited at events that more align with your mission. They said the specific exhibition that they were going to have a booth at and had in previous years has been reviewed and evolving to meet our current guests' interest within the alignment of the fair's mission and values. So I asked the Washington State Fair about that. I said, you know, what does this specific line mean that you're telling this pro-life group that's been to the fair before that you have a different perspective regarding their booth and believe their efforts would be better suited at events that more align with their mission? Here's what the Washington State Fair told me about that. We're going point by point here. I want to make sure everyone has all the facts that we've gathered over the weekend. They said, to be clear, the fair does not hold or promote a different position on the pro-life issue. The reference to a different perspective was about updated programming plans, not about the organization's beliefs. We understand that not every group will agree with every policy. Our decisions are made solely to ensure a positive experience for all guests, and the same standards are applied. And to that point, they went on to tell us in a sort of more broad statement, any political organization may apply for space, and all are subject to the same guidelines and restrictions. There is no difference in how the rules are applied based on political affiliation. So that's the story as we know it. And you kind of see how it's evolved. Like, no, the Republican Party wasn't banned. However, they were met with what for them was new restrictions that make having a booth completely unfeasible and simply not worth it. And the fair claims that its letter to the Alliance for Life wasn't about them not agreeing with the pro-life position. It was about their disagreement over the programming changes that led to the Alliance for Life being essentially disinvited from the fair this year. So there was some misinformation out there. I don't think it was intentional, but I think people saw this, jumped to some conclusions about what happened here. However, do I think that this is all innocent, is the question. And I've asked, one of the things I've asked the fair for, that they say they will provide us, but it's not ready yet, is a full list of vendors. We want to know what, if any, other political organizations are having booths at the fair, and whether their contracts were the same as the contracts sent to these conservative organizations. Democrats have had a booth at the fair in the past. Will they be allowed to sell Democrat merchandise? So you can look at it and say, well, as long as the rules are the same for everyone, then no harm, no foul. And I guess at a baseline, I understand that. However, when you prohibit the gathering of signatures for a citizen-led initiative, or when you restrict it, who does that most impact? Conservatives. Democrats aren't running initiatives right now. Conservatives are the only ones running initiatives right now. Why? Because Democrats don't need to. They have full control in Olympia. They control the House, the Senate, the governor's office. They control most major cities in the state, if not all major cities in the state. They control policy. So they don't have to run citizen initiatives to push their policy. If they want to push it through, they just vote for it. So now we have this very strict, at a time when conservatives and groups like Let's Go Washington are getting very, very good at collecting signatures, doing it very effectively, and when Let's Go Washington is mulling, releasing some new initiatives very soon. So now you have this very strict enforcement of rules around signature gathering that did not exist a year ago, 2 years ago. At least not in the sense that it was enforced, because again, I was physically there doing it. Was I breaking the rules? Nobody told me. Nobody told Pierce County over a month of collecting signatures. So do I believe that that is innocent? No. What I believe, my opinion is Democrats raised holy hell about it. And Democrats know that the Washington State Fair is attended by a lot of conservatives. Hell, half the concert lineup is country music singers. And that they know that that is a very effective place for Republicans to reach voters and to get signatures. And these initiatives have been a pain in the ass of the Democratic Party. They've had to throw tens of millions of dollars of union money and other PAC funding to defeat them. So do I think, look, if it's the same rules for everyone, I guess that's fair. But do I think that it was done behind the scenes because Democrats asked for this to be done? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Do I think that Democrats complained about the Trump t-shirts being triggering, and that's why they can't sell them this year and they're in the wrong category when they sold them last year? Yes, I do. Do I think this was an organized, concerted effort from Democrats, which they're very good at poking and pestering and saying, this is bigoted, this is hateful, you can't allow this, and so now the Pierce County Republican Party can't be there. And they can't sell the t-shirts with the American flag saying, this is my pride flag. And the t-shirts with the picture of Donald Trump saying, FAFO. Yeah, I think they were triggered by it, and they didn't want people to see them or to buy them. And I think they will do anything they can, as I've said before, to undermine the initiative process, because it is the last remaining check that we have on the party in power and the whims of progressives. So is this fair? Maybe, as long as everyone's treated equally. But is it innocent? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't believe it is. And there's really nothing that can be told to me to make me think that it is. Now, I love the fair, for the record. I love the fair. I think a lot of our viewers and listeners love the fair. I love going to the concerts at the fair, most of which, like I said, are country music singers who probably are pro-life. Many of them are probably conservative. And so I just don't think that this is a good thing for the fair to do. I understand you have to have some rules around booths and it should be uniformly applied and all of that. But you can't say those have been the rules all along, yet you never enforced them in the past. And now all of a sudden, because what? Some angry progressives complained. Now it's going to be, we are going to enforce this to the letter of the law. And then as far as the Alliance for Life letter, again, my opinion, I have nothing to show, I guess, prove definitively that the fair changed its programming just because and got rid of the Alliance for Life booth. No, I think the same thing happened. I think that there was a complaint about the display, and I don't know what the display was. I mean, if the display was like aborted fetuses, do I think that should be at a fair? And I don't know if that's what it was. No. Do I think no, that's not the place for it. I tend to agree with that. But I don't believe, as they said, that this is just the fair just had a difference of opinion about the programming and all of that. It had nothing to do with, they didn't want a pro-life, anti-abortion display at the fair. I really just think that someone somewhere, a donor, something said, we can't have this. And so they found a way to get rid of it. That's what I believe. So those are the facts of the situation. There was a lot of misinformation out over the weekend, but I do still think that this is all nefarious. And I don't think it's a good look for the fair. I do believe it looks like they're targeting conservatives. And if they care about attendance, I think that they should have handled this much better than they did. And so we'll have the follow-ups for the fair. I'm very curious in hearing from you guys whether you think that this will change your desire to attend the fair this year or to go to concerts or whatever it is. But important, I think, that you guys understand the reporting that we did on this after it initially came out over the weekend to make sure that we get you the most accurate information about what's happening behind the scenes. All right, Glenn Morgan, who is a government watchdog extraordinaire, he hosts We the Governed. He put out, it was like a Friday news dump. I was like, Glenn, he's just dropping this great video at the end of the week last week. So he has a new video. It's up on his YouTube channel. Check it out, We the Governed. And it was like, our 1 in 7 Washington voters are illegal under federal law. Here's a clip from the video.
At least 14% of our current voter rolls are not federally compliant with either the SAVE Act, which has passed Congress and now currently resides before the federal Senate, nor do the voter rolls actually comply with any election integrity executive orders that have been recently issued and signed by the White House. Now, this data appears to actually be compiled from a review of about 29 out of 39 counties in Washington state out of these voter lists and is remarkably similar in every county. And it doesn't matter whether that county is a Republican county or whether it's a Democrat county. So while recent records requests and years of accumulated data that have been compiled by a variety of volunteers who are reviewing existing voter rolls clearly have demonstrated and highlighted many problems in our Washington state voter roll system, the worst part of the situation is actually not the problematic voter rolls themselves, as concerning as that is, but it's actually the existing structure and edifice that Washington state has enacted over the past few decades to ensure that very low quality control and this kind of bureaucratic shift the blame game that goes on, and then of course legal threats and intimidation against anybody who dares question authority at all. That's all we have left in kind of this opaque, confusing, and very troubling trend in the lack of integrity, or at least lack of quality control, to ensure that we have election integrity in our state, especially something that's going to be federally compliant.
So I encourage you to watch the whole video. It's 30 minutes to understand this issue. Now, to be clear, as catchy as the headline is, 1 in 7 Washington voters technically aren't legal under federal law. We're not saying, and Glenn Morgan isn't saying, that 1 in 7 Washington voters are illegal and unable to vote. What he's saying is if the SAVE Act at the federal level becomes law, immediately Washington state will have to figure out more data and information to prove that essentially these 1 in 7 voters are legal. There's no social security numbers for many of them. Some of them have no social security number tied to their voter registration or a driver's license tied to their voter registration. Now, that could just be some sort of clerical error. They didn't have to have it at the time or whatever it was, because it's not a requirement to get registered as a voter in Washington state to have one of those things. But if the SAVE Act is law, then all of a sudden 1 in 7 voters, there isn't enough information about them held by the state to prove that they're compliant. So, I don't think 1 in 7 Washington voters are illegal, but the reality is that Washington state will have to somehow, some way, if the SAVE Act becomes law, contend with this issue. We had Glenn Morgan on Sundays with Subscribers this week to discuss. It's not against the law right now in Washington state to be a registered voter without your social security number being attached to your voter in the database, right? Because that's allowed. So it sounds like
under the HAVA Act, yeah.
So it sounds like maybe what's happening is once the SAVE Act passes, if that goes through, it would almost force Washington state to become a voter ID state. I mean, they would have to, right? So, I know there's an initiative. So that would be, that's kind of the overnight fix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a partial fix. It only fixes this category of voter who there's no way that the Secretary of State right now is honestly validating anything about him. And I want to point out, this kind of matters because the Secretary of State's office has been very deceptive and misleading for years now, pretending that they use the Social Security Administration voter ID validation process. And that's a deceptive response that's dishonest, because how do you really use it when 14% have no ID at all? And what are you actually using it for? You're removing them if they come back wrong, because there's no evidence that they do that. And this is what I find constantly is there's a lot of deception moved on. Like, for example, another thing they do, the Secretary of State will say the state on their website, validates these voters, right? But there's nobody at the Secretary of State's office or VoteWa that actually does that. What they really do, if you push them on it and dig into it, is the Department of Licensing that's doing it, so that they can basically kick the blame over there and say, well, it's their fault.
Yeah.
When you talk to the Department of Licensing, what they'll say, first they'll deny they're doing it, and then when eventually there's just too much evidence to show that they're registering non-U.S. citizens to vote, they'll say, well, it's not our problem, it's the Secretary of State's problem, because they manage the voter rolls. So it's a real, this is a willful effort to, avoid responsibility. But what they're trying to do is shift, because there's teeth in the SAVE Act, and to some extent it's implied in the executive order. There's legal liability for people who are willfully registering non-U.S. citizens, like criminal penalties. And so what the Secretary of State wants to do is pretend like they have nothing to do with that, shift the blame over to the auditors, but the auditors have no legal authority to actually fix this issue, because if, and this was, I had a quote from Steve Dunkel, the Mason County auditor here, where he outlines the statutes that are very specifically exclude him from being able to, even if Homeland Security today walks in and hands him a list and says, you've got 1,000 non-U.S. citizens registered to vote in Mason County. If he removes those people from the vote list because of that Homeland Security list, Nick Brown and Bob Ferguson would put him in prison. Specifically, they would go after him, put him in prison,
because
and the law
of
allows
sanctuary policies?
Yes, and related laws, basically. And so he'd be exceeding his authority to clean up the vote. They're not allowed to do it. At the same time, if he doesn't do it, clearly in the SAVE Act and the executive order, he could be put in prison for basically allowing, willfully and with knowledge, allowing non-U.S. citizens to be registered to vote, and to also how many of them would vote. I mean, one of the big arguments that's been brought up in the past when we've uncovered this, in small pieces at the time, they would just say, well, they didn't vote, right? Or I had these dead people that refused to take off the voter rolls. And so they would say, well, it doesn't look like she voted, so there's no harm, no foul kind of thing, right? But they're telling us, oh, we always check these lists and we always clean up our lists. No, you don't. Here's a death certificate. You've had it. It's been sent to you 3 times. Exactly what does it take to clean up the voter rolls?
Yeah, that's Glenn Morgan of We the Governed. You got to watch the full video. And again, we're not saying 1 in 7 Washington voters are illegal. We're saying there's very little information that would help us know for sure whether 1 in 7 Washington voters are illegal. And you have the Secretary of State's office that's been saying, oh, we're using Social Security numbers just to make sure that we keep our voter rolls clean. Well, how can you be doing that if you don't have it for this big chunk of registered voters in the state of Washington? We've reached out to the Secretary of State's office for comment on Glenn's report and to ask them what they plan to do if the SAVE Act becomes law and what that means for us here. I mean, will we have to overnight de facto become finally a voter ID state? So it's very significant. So you can catch that whole interview we did with Glenn Morgan on Sundays with Subscribers. It aired yesterday. To become a subscriber, sign up, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. We do great in-depth interviews every Sunday on that show that I think you'll find very interesting. All right, I toyed with whether to do this on the show today, but I am that petty. So we've been very critical of the Olympian newspaper, which is a McClatchy publication in Washington state, now for 2 reasons over the last couple weeks. The first is the Paco debacle. Of course, we debunked this story they did on a guy named Paco who was ripped off the streets by ICE for no reason. Turns out he was a wanted murderer from Mexico. His name wasn't even Paco. It was Yusef Bourbon. And they attacked me without actually naming me, but basically painted me as a bigot in their follow-up story rather than admit the errors of their initial reporting. And they still haven't honored my request for a retraction and an apology. So we did a story on that, many stories on that. And then we did a story that we did a story on this story by the Olympian where they took this poll last week. The local chapter of the Republican Party down there had put out a poll to voters in the Olympia area asking them if they support boys and girls sports, and 84% of them said no, they don't. In this deep blue, highly progressive area of the state. And rather than write a story highlighting how extraordinary that is, like, wow, 84% of voters in the Olympia area don't want boys competing against girls, they turned it, they cherry-picked these, like 2 posts from Reddit and turned it into, oh, this poll was bigoted. Like, now let's not talk about the results, but just asking the question was transphobic, essentially. Just insane. So we've tried to reach out to the Olympian. I tried to do the right thing. Many requests for comment have been sent, requests for clarification, for corrections and apologies. And I thought, well, if they won't respond to me, maybe Maybe they'll answer your questions. Nicole was alerted to an opportunity to maybe ask them some questions happening tomorrow, Tuesday, August 12th, 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. The Olympian is having an ice cream social. It says, let's chill, RSVP, and join our staff for ice cream bars, popsicles, and other treats, along with conversations about the cost of living here and how you manage. They said, have ice cream with the Olympian and talk about story ideas. So it's happening tomorrow at 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. at the Squaxin Parks Rose Garden Shelter. And Nicole, where specifically can they go to RSVP? Just the Olympian website there? Where'd you get that link?
Yes, the Olympian website.
The Olympian website. So here's a little bit more information. Please join our journalists from 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. at the Squaxin Parks Rose Garden Shelter for ice cream. We will have bars, popsicles, blah, blah, blah. It's a free event. While we're focused on gleaning story ideas on how to cope with the financial challenges of living in Thurston County, we are, of course, happy to hear other story ideas you would like to share. Oh, are you now? We also welcome you to come to the event to meet our reporters, editor, and visual journalist and ask questions about how we operate. Oh, you are happy to field some questions about how you operate. Interesting. Now, as I always say, I think it might be quite interesting if some of our dedicated, curious viewers ask some questions of these dogged reporters at the Olympian, but I ask that you do so respectfully. I don't want anyone making a scene on my behalf at the ice cream social. Have an ice cream bar, have a popsicle, ask them why they have so little journalistic integrity, and tell me what they say. Enjoy. All right, coming up next, Seattle voters are going to decide on a business and occupation tax increase on the November ballot. But if you believe Seattle's mayor, this new tax is actually a really good thing for businesses. We'll talk about it next. First, if you're thinking about selling your home, reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. The market's shifting a little bit. If you've noticed, and maybe you're looking for a home or you're looking to sell your home, there are a ton of listings on the market, but they're sitting there for a little longer. However, one of the interesting aspects is these homes are still going for high prices. I mean, the prices are still very strong. It's just maybe taking a little extra time because there's more houses out there on the markets. There's a little more competition. So Wes is the guy to help you navigate the situation. Make sure, of course, your home is well positioned. He'll give you a free market analysis. He'll come in, say, hey, here's the cosmetic updates I think would be worth it. He can help you manage those on the front end, even pay for them so you don't have to pay for them until closing. So all of that takes stress out of the process. And then he's going to talk about their marketing strategy and how to make sure in this environment where you are competing against more listings than you were a year ago, how to make sure that your listing is standing out so you can get more foot traffic in the door, more offers on the table, and ultimately the best possible price for your home. So sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. It simply is a better way to sell your home. Now, I've watched Democrats try to sell new taxes to people in all sorts of ways, but I do have to say I think this is a first, suggesting that a business tax will actually be good for businesses. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that. As so many Democrat-run cities are, Seattle is facing a budget crisis. It is, of course, a crisis of their own making. They got all this money during the pandemic, spent it on nonsense things that everybody warned them, don't spend one-time COVID funds on something you're going to need to fund in a reoccurring basis. They did it anyway. It's why Washington State, Oregon, California, all the cities they're in are having a budget nightmare. But they don't blame themselves. You can't blame yourself, of course. So you've got to blame who? Donald Trump. So they're blaming Donald Trump for Seattle's economic challenges. And Mayor Bruce Harrell, along with all, it seems, members of the city council, think one of the ways out of this is a narrowly tailored increase in the business and occupation tax. So Mayor Harrell did a proposal last month to the city council to explain what the tax is going to be and then why we need it in the first place. So one of his slides, Seattle faces increasing economic challenges, including an increased overall cost of living, increasing business and property taxes. And then he said, state and federal uncertainty. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in federal grants that are imperiled. That's a great word. They're imperiled by the current administration. Currently, the congressional One Big Beautiful Bill legislation will have direct impacts on Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and more that will directly affect our community. So, Seattle's in a bad economic situation, not because of everything we've done over the last 15 years, but because of things Donald Trump might do. It just makes no sense when you really think about it. Chicken before the egg, it makes no sense. But so what would a narrowly focused increase in the B&O tax look like? And what would it be for? What would it be spent on? So they said the proposed revenue will support the threshold lift and deduction for small businesses. We'll get to more on that in a moment. And then it would support the city's general fund investments in food access, gender-based violence. Ah, yes, this is what we need to increase taxes for. Gender-based violence, not, violence as a whole. Not, let's treat every victim of violence the same. Super strange. Small business supports, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, as if we haven't spent and don't have billions of dollars directed to homelessness. Nope, they need more taxes to deal with that. Support for workers' rights and protections. Then it says up to $30 million in proceeds from the tax would be used to mitigate the impact of federal funding reductions in housing stability, food insecurity, financial stability for affordable housing providers, and emergency shelter and homelessness. So here's the change, and here's how they are spinning this as a good thing for businesses. Oh yes, an increased B&O tax. Good thing for businesses. So what this will do is it will allow them to increase the exemption for businesses that are covered by the B&O tax. So it says step one, it'll raise B&O tax exemption threshold from $100,000 to $2 million, exempting 76% of current B&O taxpayers. So basically, if you bring in less than $2 million a year as a business, then it's going to create an exemption for you. So it's those businesses that bring in over $2 million a year that are now not only going to have to bear the brunt of the B&O, but potentially all the B&O taxes and then an increased B&O tax. So it would raise B&O tax rates for gross revenue over $2 million to raise $90 million for critical human services and programs. So if you're a business in the city of Seattle and you make under $2 million in gross revenue a year, you could look at this and say, well, that's a great thing for me. And if you are a business that makes over $2 million in gross revenue a year, you're looking at this and probably saying, what TF? Told my husband, no F words on the show this week. WTF is wrong with the city of Seattle. So this was passed unanimously by the Seattle City Council to send to voters in November. So voters in Seattle are going to have to make a decision on this. Voters in Seattle have never met a tax that they did not like. Voters in Seattle will absolutely pass this because what is it going to be spun as? Tax on big business. Oh, the rich pay their fair share once again in the city of Seattle. We, of course, know that the consequences of doing this are much more nuanced than that. But I want to play a little bit from Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell's press conference where he signed this new, I can't really call it legislation, but this proposal to be sent to voters in November. So he keeps beating this drum as, and this is how they're going to sell it, this business tax actually helps businesses.
This proposal, this B&O tax relief has been consistently highlighted in so many discussions as one of the most effective ways to support our small and medium-sized businesses. So by reducing taxes for 90% of small and medium-sized businesses, we are helping entrepreneurs pursue their dream.
Okay, I get how that sounds legitimate. I'm a small business. If you told me what's one of the ways that you could help my business, I would say get rid of my B&O tax. Get rid of the big fat check I have to write every month for running a little podcast. And I am sure that there are, every business would be like, cut my B&O. That would be helpful. But there's a couple other things here that are really important to understand when, again, we discuss how dishonest they are in selling new taxes. The first one is the state just passed $9.5 billion in new taxes, most of those on businesses. A dramatic increase in the B&O tax. So this isn't going to be some windfall for Seattle businesses. They just got hit hard by the state. So they get a little bit here, but they got a whole lot coming from the state. So let's not act like we've done any favors on the whole for businesses as it pertains to the B&O tax in the state of Washington this year. We have not, even if this thing passes. They're still screwed. not to mention all the crime issues they have to deal with and all of that. That's why there's so many empty storefronts. The other issue is this, and it's something I talk about all the time as I discuss how bad of an idea it is to target big corporations out for taxation. It was a bad idea when they passed the tax on high-paying jobs, which was before that the head tax. What happened when they did that? When they singled out specific corporations for taxation. Amazon took 10,000 jobs, more than that now, and they moved them across the lake to Bellevue. What happens when you take 10,000 jobs out of that downtown area and you ship them to Bellevue? It hurts the small businesses. It hurts the restaurants. It hurts the coffee shops. It hurts the doggy daycares. It hurts the laundromats. It hurts the bars. It hurts the bike shops. All of that whole ecosystem of businesses in the downtown area relies on corporations like Amazon to thrive. That's just the truth. Amazon has already shown that if you target them unfairly for taxation, if you single them out as some sort of form of punishment for success, that they are not afraid to take their jobs out of the city. Why do you think they're investing so much money in Bellevue and elsewhere in the country, frankly? They're building giant buildings and skyscrapers to house more employees in Bellevue because they're not going to continue to invest in Seattle. So you go downtown, there is empty storefront after empty storefront after empty storefront. And that's what happens when you punish success and major corporations. If there's all of a sudden 20,000 less employees in the downtown core at a time when a lot of downtown companies and office buildings didn't mandate return to work, so the foot traffic downtown is not back to pre-pandemic levels, not by any stretch of the imagination. So if Amazon looks at this and says, well, screw you guys, 20,000 more jobs to Bellevue, you don't think that these small businesses and these mid-sized businesses, restaurants, you don't think there's restaurants that gross over $2 million a year? Of course there are. You don't think that they would say to the city, man, we're going to go out of business now. I would rather be paying the B&O tax. I would rather be paying the B&O tax that you guys gave me a break on than to watch my business close down because we don't have any Amazon employees anymore. And I think that the city knows this. I would hope someone like Bruce Harrell, who's been in government for this long and has, I hope, people in the business sector in his ear, I hope they're telling him what a dumb, short-sighted decision this is and how the real issue at the core of this is their out-of-control spending. Cutting B&O taxes for small to mid-sized businesses, but punishing larger corporations with higher B&O taxes is going to hurt businesses across the board. So I don't know if he knows this, but he just chooses to lie to people and to manipulate because he's trying to win a mayoral election. Speaking of, he fit that in at this official press conference as well.
This balanced approach, relief for small businesses and raising new progressive revenue, underscores our city's commitment to both economic growth and community resilience. And so by signing this legislation, it places this proposal on the ballot for November 2025. If I'm not mistaken, there's a few other issues on that ballot, as I recall. Thought I was going to get a better laugh than that.
Oh, yes. Nothing like the mayor illegally politicking about his own campaign for mayor while doing an official city press conference. Pretty sure you can't do that. I would hope there's going to be some PDC violations, even if it was a joke. Here is, I think, the worst part of it all. That's what I always say. Politicians will do what politicians will do. They'll lie, they'll twist the truth, they'll gaslight to get what they need, they'll find any tax for any reason and all of that. What is supposed to be standing in the breach between politicians and the people impacted by their policies? Who is it supposed to be? Well, it's supposed to be the media, right? The media is supposed to be in that room asking questions about the things that I just pointed out. Well, hey, Mr. Mayor, is this really going to be a net benefit for businesses, considering the massive state taxes that Governor Ferguson just passed? Hey, Mr. Mayor, if Amazon is targeted out again for taxation, won't they do what they did when you passed the tax on high-paying jobs and moved 10,000 jobs over to Bellevue? And then what will that mean for small businesses? So let's check in and see if the dogged journalists in the room for this important press conference had any questions like that to ask.
If there's any questions, we'll entertain a few, but we want to sign some legislations and really shake some hands. And so if there are any questions, I don't want to deprive you of the opportunity to ask any questions. Hearing none, I'm going to count us down to 3, 2, 1, Seattle. Okay, let's sign some legislation.
Not one question. Not one question. And you wonder why we push so hard for new media, for independent media like our show and others like Jonathan Cho to have a seat at the table, to be allowed into press conferences, to be given press passes? It's because the legacy media is depleted. They're depleted and they're cowards. They're depleted and they don't care enough to ask a question of the mayor while they have him in front of them about something as serious as new taxes on businesses at a time when businesses are struggling and just got hit with billions of dollars in new taxes from the state. Not a single question. It's the media's failure that has got our state into this situation, not the failure of politicians. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for opportunity to be alerted to opportunities to do just that. And join them next week for their Northwest Sanity Forum. There's still some tickets available, so you can check that out at their website. All right, speaking of businesses, helping businesses like the city of Seattle says it's doing. Well, the state of Washington, after passing $9.5 billion in new taxes, mostly on businesses, they want to help new businesses too, as long as you're gay. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. Whoop. All right, as I said, after passing a slew of new taxes to punish businesses in the state of Washington for the misspending of Democrats over many years, Governor Bob Ferguson came out with this great thing that's going to help businesses in the state of Washington. He posted on X, Washington state has a thriving, diverse business community. Oh, yeah. Our new certification program for LGBTQ-owned businesses, one of the first in the nation, ensures we are recognizing our LGBTQ business owners and helping them access government contracts. Ah, yes, the state of Washington is now bolstering a program that will give businesses preferential treatment for state contracts, depending on who the owners of that business sleep with. Here's from the press release from Bob Ferguson. Washington state among first to offer official recognition of LGBTQ-owned businesses. LGBTQ plus small business owners and entrepreneurs can now certify their businesses with Washington state's new LGBTQ Business Enterprise Program. The statewide certification is free of charge and will help LGBTQ-owned businesses access valuable government contracts to grow and sustain their business. Washington state agencies are incentivized to contract directly with OMWBE certified businesses. And those are woman, minority-owned businesses, etc. And now it's going to be gay businesses as well. OMWBE tracks state agency spending with certified business to set aspirational spending goals and will begin reporting on state spending with LGBTQ plus owned businesses starting in 2026. OMWBE also connects certified businesses with free consultations and training. OMWBE Director Lexa Fernandez said, "We are excited to partner with the Washington State LGBTQ Commission to launch one of the nation's first statewide LGBTQ business enterprise programs. This certification allows us to build business solutions that truly improve equity in public spending by recognizing LGBTQ plus owned businesses in government contracting." Holy smokes. Okay, let's break this down for a second. So they already have they've already prioritized minority-owned and women-owned businesses in state contracting and set these artificial thresholds. We have these lucrative state contracts. We're going to give out millions and millions of dollars. and we are going to prioritize businesses owned by women, businesses owned by people of color, and now businesses owned by gay people. Which I have no idea how that's lawful. I have no idea how it's legal to dole out multi-million-dollar government taxpayer-funded contracts to people based on immutable characteristics that have nothing to do with how well those businesses can carry out business on behalf of the state and on behalf of the taxpayers. I'm a woman. I can tell you definitively, there is nothing about what's happening under my shirt or in my pants that makes me particularly good at my job as a podcaster. There are, in fact, many men who have much better podcasts than I do, although I think ours is pretty good. I also don't think we need special treatment for our podcast to be successful. I don't think someone having a different or darker skin pigmentation would make them more equipped to do business with the state on a contract being paid by taxpayers. And I have no idea what in the world who you decide to sleep with would make someone more suited to do business with the state of Washington. And besides that, how do they even prove it? And what is a woman, may I ask? That's the other question. They support women-owned businesses? I have to imagine that means men who pretend they're women can get prioritized for contracts now in two ways, because they can get the women-owned contract deals and they can get the LGBTQ plus deals. So if you're a dude and you're struggling with your business, I got two things that you can do like this to get a state contract worth tens of millions of dollars. You don't even have to prove competency. Say you identify as a chick. And also say you're gay. And the same goes, because how are they going to prove it? It says how to apply for certification. LGBTQ plus business enterprise is one of several certifications in our state certification program. To qualify, this kills me. To qualify, a small business must be for-profit and licensed to do business in Washington state. LGBTQ plus individuals must own at least 51% of the business, manage and control day-to-day operations, and fall under a personal net worth threshold. Hold on a second. So, two things there. At least 51% of your business ownership has to be gay or trans. How are they going to check that? How are they going to check that? Every one of you should be gay on paper with the state of Washington. How are they going to check that? Are they going to come in your room and watch to see if you're a dude sleeping with a dude or a chick sleeping with a chick? No, you're going for a state contract. Let me tell you this right now. You're gay. You're gay or you're trans, because there's no mandate that you have to have surgery or anything. Show up in a dress and you get that money, because there's no reason not to at this point. They're going to give preferential treatment to people based on characteristics that have nothing to do with the strength of their business. And it also says to get one of these to be preferred, you have to fall under a personal net worth threshold. Hold on. So that might sound good on paper, saying, oh, you can't be like some very wealthy person to benefit from this. So you're telling me it's the failed business owners are the ones that are going to get the state contracts? The people who aren't worth much money because, I don't know, they haven't had success in business? So you got to fall under one of the immutable characteristics, and your business can't have done very well. Then they'll give you a state contract. I'm sure that's just a rockin' use of taxpayer funds. The only preferential, and I say that loosely, treatment for businesses and state contracts that I support are veteran-owned businesses for two reasons. They have served their country and their communities in some way. So that's a way that we can pay them back. If you're a black person or a gay person or a woman, you haven't served in that sense. You just were born. No, if you went and you fought for our country, this is a good way we can pay you back. The other reason is that's a skill set. I still think as a veteran-owned business, you better be doing a good job and be able to prove why you should get a contract with the state. So I don't think you should just be handing them out willy-nilly to anyone who was a veteran. No, you have to have a business that fits the needs and merit and all these things. But that's a skill set that you've acquired in your life. Being born black isn't a skill set. Being born a chick isn't a skill set. Being born gay, which I do believe you are born gay, not trans, that's not a skill set. So this is unreal. Hey, let's tax. This is what Bob Ferguson thinks, though, and voters will buy into it. Oh, let's tax businesses $9.5 billion, but then let's help out gay businesses, and people will just give me credit for that. It's wild, you guys. It's absolutely wild. All right, I got some good national stories coming in hot for you next. It's hot in here. It's hot in the studio today. It's going to be hot outside today. It's going to be like 100 degrees out today. I don't like it. All right, if you haven't taken the First Mark Challenge already, you really should. And honestly, I'm tired of telling you guys to take it and you haven't. It's really grinding my gears if you haven't taken the First Mark Challenge yet, because it's such a no-brainer. I'm trying to save you money. I'm trying to save you enough money so you can become a paid subscriber to Undivided. So you can't be like, well, Brandi, $5 a month. I could save you $1,000 a year. Well, First Mark could, but you got to take the First Mark Challenge first. FirstMarkInsurance.com. FirstMarkInsurance.com. We hear endless, every week, multiple times a week, we're hearing stories from Undivided viewers and listeners who took the First Mark Challenge and saved thousands of dollars a year and got either the same insurance they already had or even better insurance and better coverage. And the nice thing is you never pay First Mark anything for their services. You don't pay them for the First Mark Challenge. You don't pay them to handle your insurance needs in perpetuity. And so to me, it was a no-brainer decision for Mike and I. We're now members of the First Mark family. And it was a no-brainer decision for our business. And I love working with First Mark because they're so communicative. When we have renewals coming up, they're reaching out constantly to see, has anything changed with your business, changed in your life, et cetera. They take all the stress out of the insurance process. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you, not the insurance companies. Okay, so Trump had a marathon press conference this morning in the White House briefing room. He had been teasing this. He made a decision to temporarily, essentially federalize Washington, D.C., so he can try to use the power of the federal government to get a hold of the crime crisis, but also he was saying he just wants to clean up the streets.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly.
I bet you the DC police are so jazzed about this. They're like, oh my gosh, we get to work for the president for a little while and actually go out and fight crime. Before I get to kind of some of my concerns about it or trepidations about it, he talked a lot this morning, and I was watching it as I was getting ready to come in today. You know, he was saying he's got all these world leaders coming from all over the world, and they land in DC and they see disgusting streets and filth and squalor, and it's not safe in some areas. And he said it's personally embarrassing for him. And the same is true, he's got to go to Russia to meet Vladimir Putin right after doing a press conference talking about how crappy DC looks.
And it's embarrassing for me to be up here. You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. Russia. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful capital was.
Yeah, and I get that. It is this weird thing about, Washington, D.C. existing in the way that it does, and then not having it controlled by the federal government. Although whenever you have anyone who's putting sort of a state of emergency in place that allows them to get all these profound powers they didn't have, to me, it has to be temporary. I mean, I go back to 975 days of one-man rule under Jay Inslee, although that was for a much dumber reason over COVID. Certainly, I might have a different opinion about this as the weeks drag on, depending on what they're able to do. He says he thinks they can go in there and do it pretty quick. I thought it was interesting. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser was on MSNBC, and they were trying to bait her, with a question about, oh, this is all about race, and it's all about, black criminals and you, the black mayor and all of that. And she wants them to work collaboratively with her, but she seems to think that it's actually a good thing for the federal government to get involved more.
They seem to hold their harshest criticism sometimes for cities that are majority black and brown.
God.
Do you see that, and what do you think that means?
I think that I have been dealing kind of with this issue for a number of years. It's kind of easy fodder on the campaign trail. But now we're talking about governing, and my job is to focus on making sure our city is running well, and people enjoy a great quality of life. And I think we're doing a really good job. We do need the federal government's help, as I mentioned, because they have an outsized influence on our criminal justice system. We need more prosecutors. We need more judges. There are other ways to help. Even we want to rebuild our jail, and there are ways that the feds can help with that. But also just doing their part, cutting the grass, fixing the fountains, making sure that federal law enforcement is doing all of the policing that they can do. And I just have to say thank you to MPS, FBI, ATF, who've always worked cooperatively with us, and we expect that they will again.
Yeah, so she's not fully opposed to it. I mean, I don't think any mayor wants a president to come in and basically take over their police department, but there are things that she recognizes the federal government can help with. And yeah, DC should be beautiful. I agree with the president. He thinks like a business person. You know, he doesn't want people coming into his buildings and then looking like crap and all of that. He was just complimented by RFK Jr. last week for everything he's done to make the White House look better and for, you know, when world leaders come there. So I do think there's a point to be made there. It's sort of a wait and see for me to see what they're able to do. Now, there are some limitations here. Judge Jeanine Pirro, I always just want to call her Judge Jeanine. Jeanine Pirro, who of course was appointed as the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, she spoke and said, you know, we're going to be out there and arresting criminals and all of this, but it's a matter of you've got some of those criminals, even if we arrest them, they still are going to end up in the local courts, the D.C. courts, and those operate much different than we would operate on the federal side of things. And so she said we're limited there.
Here's the problem. Assuming that they're 17 years, older than 17 years old, I can get the case. If they're under 18 years of age, I can only get the case if it's murder, rob one, rape, or even if they shoot a gun but don't kill you, I can't get it. So the law has to be changed. As the president said, cashless bail, that has to be changed. All right, then even assuming I get the case, I get jurisdiction, I get a conviction, the DC Council has given the judges the ability to give probation on shootings. And so then it's up to them. All of these things, the Youth Rehabilitation Incarceration Reduction Act, and now they want to seal records. So if we work hard, we get a conviction, they want to wipe it out. So that needs all to be changed.
Yeah, and they're not going to be able to do that overnight. So there's some people they're going to arrest, but what happens then? You track them through this system. Is it just catch and release, and then they're just spinning their wheels? So I'm going to put a pin in having a strong opinion. I think for now it's the best thing. I was in D.C. and gosh, was it end of January or early February? And I know Nicole was there for the inauguration, which is kind of a different time because there's so much security there during the inauguration. But yeah, there were definitely streets that reminded me very much of Seattle, in places of the city that we were told don't go to. And it just shouldn't be that way. I mean, in Seattle, a couple of areas of the city you're told don't go to are right by the tourist destinations. So you got to go around them. It's just ridiculous, and it should be able to be dealt with. When you have, and the same is true in DC, when you have so much of the crime focused in such small areas, everyone should be like, let's put every resource we have into those areas, and we have to have a sustained presence so they don't come back the next day or just shuffle down the street, and there have to be arrests. You have to disrupt the drug trafficking so that the drug users who are committing crimes to fund their habits, they have to do something, and if they leave, fine. But we have to get them into treatment, obviously. But there has to be a sustained law enforcement presence with consequences, or none of this is going to be fixed, whether it's in a city like Seattle or a city like DC. So interesting stuff. All right, one more I had to play because I was just LMAOing over this. Yeah, I did just say that. I'm trying not to swear today. My husband thought I swore too much last week, which he's probably correct. I was LMAOing about this. So, of course, there's this controversy around the gerrymandering happening in Texas, and all the blue states saying, well, we'll do it too. This is a threat to our democracy and da-da-da. I will give credit to Kristen Welker of NBC, because she actually pointed out the obvious that we discussed on the show last week. They all gerrymander. They all freaking gerrymander. So she's got Illinois Governor Pritzker in front of her, and kudos to her for asking this question.
Every major group that grades the fairness of congressional maps gives your state an F. Common Cause, a nonpartisan government watchdog, even says your map, and I'm going to quote, represents a nearly perfect model for everything that can go wrong with redistricting. And I guess the question is, you talk about preserving democracy. How do you preserve democracy if you're using the same tactics that you've criticized Texas Republicans for?
Snap.
But as I say, what they're talking about is a distraction. The reality is that the violation of people's voting rights is what Texas is attempting to do. That's what's wrong with their efforts right now. And the fact that the president of the United States knows it and nevertheless is asking them to do it. That is what's wrong with what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, when they do it, it's a threat to our very democracy. When we do it, no big deal. Same thing happened. This is Fox News with New York Governor Kathy Hochul.
Here's how National Review summarized it. They said it was only 3 years ago that New York's Democratic legislature drew up a map so brazenly contemptuous of basic rules that govern a district's contiguousness that the state's Democrat-dominated Court of Appeals threw it out. The New York Times at the time called those maps comically contorted. That's their quote. So your state's highest court at the time, all the judges appointed by Democratic governors, they threw the maps out. So fair to say Democrats have done what they're now accusing Republicans of doing.
No, we followed the rules. We do it every 10 years. We base it on census.
But the court said you didn't follow the rules.
Well, we did follow the rules.
Oh, we did. No, the court was wrong, even though it was like a court of our own appointees. So they all freaking do it. Now, does it make it right? No, not necessarily, but they're having a full-on meltdown over what's happening in Texas. Gavin Newsom, his state's on fire. Where is he? He's with the hidden Texas Democrats talking about how this is a threat to our democracy and it will not stand. And you'll notice that their retort to it, to something they say is a threat to democracy, is them saying, so we'll do it too. This was a clip, again, MSNBC with former AG Eric Holder calling him out for suggesting the answer to a threat to democracy is to do the exact same thing.
How can gerrymandering both be a threat to democracy and also the way to save it?
Yeah, Eric.
Well, there's no question that gerrymandering is a threat to our democracy. It allows politicians to pick their voters as opposed to citizens choosing their representatives. But we are now in a situation where we find ourselves where authoritarian moves are being made by the White House through various states, Texas most prominent among them. And there has to be a response to that. What I've said is that we have to protect our democracy now if we ultimately want to be able to save it. And so taking the reasonable steps that have been proposed in California, I think it makes a great deal of sense in this moment, a temporary way in which to respond to that which is happening in Texas, with the thought that after this crisis has passed, we get back to the fight against gerrymandering by anybody.
Yeah, just temporary. We've heard that before. Oh, we're just doing this for a little while. But it's good when we do it. We're fighting for democracy. They're fighting against democracy. Politicians are the worst. The worst. I mean, they truly are, with relatively few exceptions. They are the worst. They have no moral compass. They're just reeking hypocrisy. They're annoying to listen to. I think I have to block Gavin Newsom on X. I've never considered blocking a politician in my life. He is so schwarmy. Is that the word? Smarmy. Oh my gosh, he's just oozes. Ugh, I can't even tolerate it anymore. I think I got to block the guy. He follows me too. So, you know.
He does?
Well, I think his press office does.
I like it.
I don't think Gavin clicked the follow button, but I can't tolerate it anymore. I mean, politicians really are the worst, aren't they? Gosh, it's so bad. Okay, we have our daily subscriber show poll coming up next. We're going to talk about Trump's decision to federalize D.C. temporarily, which again, it's got to be temporary. It's got to be temporary. First, if you are planning for retirement, which you all should be unless you're already in retirement, which is important too, to make sure that you're following everything that's happening globally with our economy, to make sure that your retirement is properly protected. If you have questions about what's been happening, either the impact of tariffs on your retirement portfolio, anything that comes at me, jobs report, whatever it is, the Sydney Sweeney controversy and the AE stocks, and you're not sure how it's impacting your retirement portfolio and your retirement plans, ask our friend Zach Abraham with Bulwark Capital for a second opinion. It really is that simple, totally free. Just say, hey, Brandi told me to reach out and get a second opinion on my retirement portfolio. He'll give it a look over. He'll give you his honest assessment, and he'll talk about Bulwark Capital's risk management strategy, how they're always looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, give your retirement as much upside as possible. And he says he's done reviews of people's retirement portfolios. And he said, yeah, I told him it was just fine and sent them on their way. And so I think that's what you want. You just want honesty, and everyone wants you, at least here, and I know at Bulwark, to make sure that your retirement is properly protected and that you get the retirement that you dream of. So whether that's with Bulwark handling your portfolio or someone else, that's all Zach cares about. So just like breathed in something there. You only get one retirement. Get a second opinion on your retirement portfolio's efficiency. Schedule your free risk review now at knowyourriskpodcast.com. Don't put it off. knowyourriskpodcast.com. Okay, let's get to our daily subscriber show poll. We asked our paid subscribers on Patreon, Locals, and X about this move from President Trump to temporarily federalize D.C. in order to fight crime and clean up the city. So do you support it? Yay or nay?
Yay.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely temporarily. And hey, if these cities can't get their act together, I'm all about, helping all the cities get their act together.
Yeah, it's always slippery slope though.
It is.
The law allows him to do it in DC. So it's much different than him coming in, taking over something in a different city. I would probably feel much differently about that because I'm not in support of federal overreach. But DC, there's a reason the law exists to allow him to do that on a temporary basis.
Yep.
I don't want it to be abused, unless you're going to go through and change the whole system and the makeup of in DC and the point of it and all that stuff. So I will have a keen eye on whether it's abused or he tries to do it in other cities. But for now, I have to agree with you. 20% of our viewers say no, they don't agree with it. 80% roughly say yes. Chris Man 2 says at some point in time, Sanity needs to rule. They have 15-year-old kids carjacking, and because they're juvie, they get no meaningful punishment. If you're under 25, the city considers you a minor. WTF. That's crazy. I didn't know that. Spark of Pierre on Locals, unfathomable damage was done under Biden. It'll take something equally spectacular to restore our nation's collective soul. Wow, that was deep and eloquent.
Wow.
Brandon Ferris, can he come do that on the entire West Coast, please? I just wish that, I don't want the president coming and taking over city police departments. DC is a different story, but I wish that they would welcome him. I wish that they would welcome the feds and immigration and customs enforcement and do joint crackdowns and takedowns. They do some of that with the DEA and the FBI, certainly on the streets. They've done it in the past. But, I wish they would welcome, for instance, the National Guard. We don't have enough police officers to go in downtown Seattle and inundate these problem areas. LA doesn't, Portland doesn't. Why would you not welcome any tool at your disposal to come in and finally rid your cities of these blights? It's all political. If they had a Democratic president in office who was saying, hey, you need some help, we can help with the National Guard, whatever it is. Our states could do it on their own. They could go to Governor Ferguson and ask him for help with the National Guard.
Right.
Because he controls it here.
It's not just to clean up the visual, eyesore. It's to help the human suffering, get people some help, get people off the streets and get them some real help for their addictions and their suffering.
Right, triage it. Send them out. National Guardsmen
out of control.
100%. Send them out with all your caseworkers. Flood the zone.
Yes.
Flood the zone. Slim Jakey, I lived in the DC area before I moved here. DC proper, there are already 20 plus different police agencies. Well, I guess maybe one more will do the trick. And it's not a policing issue. It's a political will issue. So you can have 100 police departments. You can have 10,000 more police officers than you need. But if the laws and the political will aren't in place to make sure there's consequences for action, then arresting them does nothing, does virtually nothing. Kat says she supports it. if it's temporary for a certain period of time. She said, I heard local conservative radio that Congress is going to take up the issue. Yeah, and look, if they want to make it for a longer period of time or permanently, they have to. It has to be done the right way. It has to be done the right way. Let me see. Hugh says, here's an opportunity for Trump to provide a model for cities and demonstrate how they can clean up and reduce crime. However, there are major situations under which this effort can fail. 1, the feds perform too aggressively and the whole thing backfires. 2, there's pushback from D.C. police or Capitol Police. In a conflict between a president and a mayor, we know who wins the battle and loses the war. Or 3, judges undermine law enforcement by releasing the arrested, light sentences, and even tossing charges. Yeah, so if Trump does this, and it doesn't make a difference, that's going to backfire too. He has to go in and do a good job, because all of us who are preaching tough on crime, crackdown, well, if Trump can't do it in D.C., I mean, it's going to undermine that talking point for us pretty significantly.
I don't think failure is an option.
Failure is not an option. It absolutely is not. Okay, good comments per the usual. Let's get to show comments. Miranda's not with us today.
And on a day where it's made YouTube's on that, everybody's name is their handle. So sorry.
Why does YouTube do that occasionally?
Why it does that.
I don't know. Is it just new people on? No, I see some old ones. I don't know. Everybody's name is their handle. That's so annoying.
YouTube's so annoying.
Crazy. On the fair and whether conservatives are being forced out of the fun of the fair. Sunny Days PNW says, Lawfare and Life Group rejection. I hope they secure a city permit to have a booth outside the fair. There will be protesters and more volunteers than ever. Bad juju for the fair. The left got exactly what they wanted. No Republican conservative booth, education, and shutdown initiatives. I pray people step up donations to make it happen. No matter what the other stipulations are, we cannot allow them to silence us. That'll be my show poll tomorrow, whether this ordeal will change whether people are attending the fair. So be noodling on your responses.
I know. I also don't want them to take away all the fun just because, there's somebody in there that's like, oh, let's tone down the political. I don't know that the intention. I know the intention of the Democrats or whoever was, in the ear of people saying, silence them, whatever. I know those people, their intention was not great. I don't know that the fair's intention was terrible, because I think that they were just trying to be like, let's just keep things quiet. Let's keep everybody happy, and it didn't work.
No.
But I also think that fairs, a tradition, and I don't want kids to miss out on that kind of those memories. And some fairs are better than others, and some fair experiences are better than others. But I don't know. Choose where to spend your money and who to support. But at the same time, I don't know. Wear your Trump shirt to the fair.
True.
Call it good.
That'd be fun. Wear your Make Common Sense Great Again hat that you get at undividedpod.com.
There you go.
You get some interesting, confused looks wearing that hat. You're like, does she like Trump? Does she hate Trump? I don't understand.
Create some conversation.
Yes. Michelle Polson, good grief. Can't people have the opportunity to just enjoy the state fair without anything closely related to political booths being there? And that's an argument to be made as well.
There you go.
But again, it's the change that I think was shocking to people. I like I said, if there's a pro-life booth and they're showing, I don't know if this is what they were showing, but pictures of aborted fetuses, no thanks. No thanks. There's a time and a place for that. I don't think it's around children. Michelle, I agree with you that there's an argument to be made. I think is it fair treatment? Is it equal treatment? And what brought about the clear changes that we're seeing here, where they sort of looked the other way in previous years? Sarah Gerriot, for decades our family has enjoyed attending the fair together for my dad's birthday. He's turning 82 this year, and none of us will be attending, thanks to the clear bias the state fair has made in their biggest exhibit. And if that's the choice you make, then fine. We wanted to bring you all the information, and there was a lot going rampant on social media over the weekend, and so we hope we gave you factual information that you can use to make the decision that you feel like is right for you and your family. Old Sub Sailor, $10 super chat. The socialist communist Dems are afraid they are losing ground in the state. They're doing whatever they can to block the advertisement of conservative values and ideas. Oh yeah, they've been doing that. They would do that even if they didn't think they were losing ground. They want all dissent squashed. On the Glenn Morgan segment on 1 in 7 Washington voters are missing some key data about them. Rachel says that was a very eye-opening and informative interview. God bless you, Glenn Morgan. Yeah, Glenn does awesome work. Just love it. On the Olympians, ice cream social. That's my Peter Griffin laugh. Robert Parker says, oh, that looks like a fun opportunity to speak to the Olympian blog, formerly a newspaper. Again, respectful. You can sit there licking your ice cream like, hey, why didn't you, here's some example questions. Why didn't you offer a retraction for your initial Paco story? Why didn't
respond
you
to an email?
give an apology over your initial Paco story? Why did you publish the Paco story without any outside independent confirmation? Why was your response to paint Brandi Kruse as a racist, bigot, homophobe, rather than, I don't know, take responsibility? Why elevate the voices of 2 anonymous people on Reddit to act as if a polling question about boys and girls sports was controversial when 84% of people didn't think it was? Just an example of some questions you could very politely ask while...
Thought-provoking.
Yep, thought-provoking. I don't eat ice cream like that. I don't know why I was... I gotta stop. Fergie on giving preferential treatment to gay business owners. Shine the Light says, does anyone here remember affirmative action and quotas? We're just doing it again under different names. And they'll always find ways to justify it. And I'm the bigot for saying that that's not right and that we should award state contracts based on merit and based on their ability to effectively carry out those state contracts for the lowest price possible. Imagine that. Michelle Wade, how does this work into anti-discrimination? This is all about discrimination. I don't know how it's lawful. I do not know how it's lawful. Let's see. Robert with the $5 super chat. Based on Ferguson's announcement to discriminate in state contracts, I now identify as a lesbian. I dare them to state I'm not. They can't. Because under their rules, you can be anything you want to be. So I am a trans mask queer lesbian.
Yeah.
Black, and I'm black.
Yeah.
And I would like a state contract right now. All right. What about you, Nicole?
What am I?
Feeling a little gay today?
Feeling a little
bi. A little Hispanic, even?
LGBTQ.
You're pretty tan right now.
Yeah.
Questioning, or is that queer?
Queer.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the two, what is it? The two...
Two-spirit.
Two-spirited.
Maybe, yeah, feeling a little bi, want to mix it up a little bit? Not with me. Not with me, for the record.
Two-spirited, yeah.
Oh, we have way too much fun on this show.
Silliness.
We have to, or we'd be depressed. Right? On President Donald Trump's press conference, which you said, D-Man in Seattle says that press conference was amazing. Jeanine Pirro was breathing fire, and the whole room loved Trump. He was making jokes. Everyone was laughing. Man in charge. You'll like our closing sanity check. Just wait.
And guess what you will not see on the news later?
Oh, yeah. The fun
You
parts.
won't see any of that.
No, you won't see any of it. Let's end with Lil Miss J111. Sorry, YouTube's doing that.
So
$10 super chat on DC. Yes, exactly. Those crime areas are a few blocks away from tourist areas. And really, there's a huge chunk of DC that's
close.
a tourist area.
It all is,
and,
really.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. When you're going down there, you're just trying to walk as fast as you can, get as many places as you can.
Right.
And you know, it's not like there's a sign that says, don't go that way.
Right, yes. And that's the issue in Seattle is you want to go from like Westlake to Pike Place. The worst part of Seattle is right by Pike Place Market. It's impossible to avoid. Don't go down 3rd Avenue. I always tell people, for the love of God, don't go down 3rd Avenue. Nicole, thank you. With that, let's get to our closing. Why do you have that look on your face?
I'm just waiting.
Closing sanity check. So I said I was watching that Trump press conference while I was getting ready this morning to have my coffee and stuff. And I was like, literally no one is having more fun than the president of the United States right now. It's not even possible for a president to have more fun than Donald Trump is having. And if you like watch the whole thing, I'm sorry, but I think the media actually secretly loves him too.
This is the most people we've ever seen in this briefing.
I've never seen
ever, right?
Yeah, I've never seen any. Where's Caroline? Where's my superstar? Caroline. Is Caroline in the back? Where's Caroline? Come here, Caroline. Come here, Caroline. Come here. Is she doing a good job, by the way? Come here, Caroline. Is this the largest crowd that you've ever seen?
This is definitely the most packed briefing, and I think all of you would agree. I think it's why we need to build a ballroom.
Mr. President, I have a better idea.
All right, Brian, go ahead.
My question is this. You're building the big, beautiful ballroom. Yeah. Could we build a big, beautiful briefing room, updated technology, more seats?
I don't want to do that. I don't want you to be comfortable. So no, I don't want to make life comfortable.
Come on, having that much fun at 79 years old, and the media, for as much as they're unfair to him and they publish hit pieces on him, he really is the funnest, most transparent, most available president the press corps in D.C. has ever covered, and they will miss him when he's gone. That has been our closing sanity check. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here on this Monday. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. A special thank you to our paid subscribers who fund our show and make it possible with just $5 a month. If you want to become a subscriber, catch our episodes of Sundays with subscribers, it's a great time to do it. What are you waiting for? Go to undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com, and then you just click on the banner. It says support the show. Make it super easy. And while you're there, you can shop our merch store, get one of those Make Common Sense Great Again hats to wear around the Washington State Fair. We'll bring the Trump to them. Or is it a Trump hat? No one knows. That's the beauty of it. All right, see you tomorrow.